Hi, my name's Sydney Howard, and I'm going to be doing my Chapter 2 reflection. And Chapter 2 is about story elements, and it consisted of genre, setting, plot, and character development. So it's just amazing to me how we could watch TV and movies and all these other forms of stories, reading books too, and be able to infer so much from so little just because we have such a long history of categorizing, and we have all those neurons and stuff that just do that, and it's just subconscious, and it's the same with comprehension strategies. So any good writer is gonna play on that with their character development. Like they're not gonna tell you the characters are just they're bad or good or whatever. They're gonna tell you, you know, they're going to show it through the relationships and the things they say and the actions that they take. And with the setting too, it's just like if the author's really good, you're going to be filling in the blanks and adding things in that they didn't even say, and you wouldn't even know it. It's just your brain does it for just a richer reading experience. So the I just think that's amazing, especially with how difficult the writers really have it making something original with all these books that have been occurring over and over again over thousands of years. So the first section of chapter 2 was about genres, and genres help readers understand what they can expect and not expect in a book. So if you're reading about trolls and dungeons and stuff, you're not going to expect anything like informational or a huge romance scene or anything like that. So, and it also talks about like how genres they can like blend together. So you can easily blend like non-fictional text with like poetry or even fiction. So like an example of that would be the Magic School Bus. So they're learning about the natural world, but you're not going to see kids flying around on a magic school bus. But I never really thought about like how a certain genre could have like subgenres that blend together too. Like you're watching a movie and everything's all plausible, and then there's like this one thing you're like, oh, I don't think that's really real. Like, what kind of movie am I even watching anymore? So I'm just gonna move on to the setting. So the setting can become like a character, especially if it's like a character versus setting kind of book or movie. Like Hunger Games, like the setting of the Hunger Games is like so evil and it's constantly trying to hurt you, and you're always in danger from it. It's just like a mortal enemy, you know. And the settings could also be like symbolic of metaphors too. So, I mean, in the Hunger Games, it's like symbolic of like unfairness and of war and everything that mankind has been doing wrong in that fictional fantasy world. Well, it's not really fantasy, but anyways, let's see what else. I really, really like the metaphors when you start teaching that, but it's kind of like I didn't learn about it in elementary school, as I think it's just too abstract. But for middle and high school students, I think we should really be teaching about metaphors because you dive in so deep to the text, and you could really never. How do you do metaphors if someone's never shown you how to do it? It's so you really have to think about it. Okay, so we're gonna go into character development. So there's so much that goes into character development, and I really appreciate what the authors are doing. I'm a huge, huge, huge Harry Potter fan, especially all the books I've read a million times. So I relate everything to Harry Potter, and our textbook does too. I've seen it 3 times in this chapter, and every reading book I've ever seen has it in there. So I'm gonna save a few things about that. So the characters, let's see. They're usually like out of harmony with their peers, and this goes into the plot. So in Harry Potter, like he's the boy who lived, and everybody's like gawking at him, and he's so out of harmony. I mean, even in the magical world and the non-magical world in his house. So, and then in like book 4 and 5, the ministry's after him and saying that he's telling lies, and then in the last book, there's all those evil people that he's constantly at war with. And I love like how great stories have like so many different story elements involved. So with plots, there's like character versus character problems, or character versus nature, character versus self, and society. So in Harry Potter, I mean, there's in every single book there's some of these elements. So character versus character. So his enemy is Voldemort, but it's also the Death Eaters, and it's also like the newspapers and all the people that don't believe him and that kind of stuff. And then he's also got like some minor little squabbles with people in his house and the Slytherins and stuff like that. So it's all character and society. And then also character versus nature, like this Whomping Willow keeps hitting him, and he's getting attacked by big spiders and giants and stuff like that. And then there's also some character versus self when he has like a vision that he attacked his friend's dad when it was Voldemort and that snake. He didn't know if he was a good person anymore, and he was talking to Sirius about it. So it's just so many different things can go into a good book. Let's see. And I'd really like, and you can do this kind of activity with any age group. So, I mean, I was watching Pooh with my youngest son, and I saw examples of all this. So you could take like screenshots of the movie and have them match up, like when there's a character versus character problem or character versus nature. So like Winnie the Pooh is having a hard time getting honey from the bees. So that's like character versus nature because he's hungry. So I'd really like to get snippets from a lot of different movies and books and stuff, and group all these into the plot. And then with little kids, like you could have them like draw the main characters, or draw the problems, and draw the setting and stuff like that. And today my son, I told him about my reflection from last week, and he had read a book about a dog. So I told him I was gonna record him talking about like what the dog likes to do and what the dog looks like and stuff. So that's another activity you could do for any of those story elements. Or they could write stories about it themselves, or all kinds of stuff. Okay, so there's some other groups of stories. So there's like an initiation story, and it's like the story, the character would have to gain some sort of skill or something he was missing to be the hero. So it's like Aquaman, like he doesn't want any social responsibility for the sea people. He just like wants to drink beer and be left alone. And then he takes responsibility for them, and he's gonna have the land and the water people love each other and stuff. And he gets the Tident, so it's kind of like a metaphor for taking responsibility, and he's the hero. So that's like what's so beautiful about having the movies and stuff as resources for all these story elements, because there's just so many things you can relate things to, and we need to be encouraging that. So there's journey books, and that's when the character develops over time, and you could also think of that as like a literal journey. Wild by Cheryl Strayed, she's addicted to, I don't know what, heroin or something like that, and she goes on the Pacific Trail, and she gets cleaned up, and then meets her husband and has their kids at the end of it. And she does a lot of reflection and stuff on the hike. And there's imagery kind of stories, and that kind of makes me think of like adult like romance books. They use a lot of that, like Twilight, like he's so shiny and sparkly and stuff. and then like all the smells of the forest and the noises and all that stuff. Especially like when she becomes a vampire and she starts explaining all the stuff that she sees. So I'm going to talk about the ELL kids now. So their plots and their story development and the characters and stuff are a whole lot different than ours. Like they're not used to like individuality and kids being problem solvers and having good morals and adults being flawed and that kind of stuff. So we need to ease them into it, and we could do that by having them share their favorite stories and comparing their stories from their culture to ours, and that really helps ease them in when they feel like their culture has been represented in the class. So thank you for listening to my reflection. Bye.